Now the next set of missiles that we need to discuss are a part of Indian Ballistic Missile Defense Program. Now when we talk about Indian Ballistic Missile Defense Program, these are missiles which are going to act against an incoming ballistic missile. That is, let's say we are under attack. We have been attacked by one of the countries in our neighborhood. I don't need to name them. In this case, what do? We do not have a defense mechanism. We need to have one. And this is when a program like this was launched back in 1999. In 1999, after the Kargil war, we realized that we need to have a defense mechanism against anything that is incoming. So, especially against the ballistic missile, we need to have a program, we need to have a missile, because these are the missiles, or the ballistic missiles normally are highly destructive in nature. So this seeded the idea in our minds that we need to have a defense mechanism against it. This is where we started to think of a multi-layered defense system, one which will work in the higher level of the atmosphere, and the second which will work at the lower level of the atmosphere. The first one was named as Prithvi Air Defense, or PAD, and the second one was named as Advanced Air Defense, or AAD. The other name that was given for Prithvi Air Defense is also Pradyumna. Please remember this name as well. Just in case you come across this term instead of Prithvi Air Defense, just remember that Pradyumna and Prithvi Air Defense both mean the same thing. Both are the same missiles. So what are these missiles? These are the missiles which will act against an incoming ballistic missile. Now, when we talk about the ballistic missiles, we have to understand that it's not very easy to intercept an incoming missile. That has been the reason that you will not see that there are many countries in the world which have a defense mechanism. For example, if you just have to name the countries, Russia is one, USA is another, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, China. These are some of the countries which have a defense mechanism against ballistic missiles. India has been added to the list. Now, so why is it so? I mean, if you talk about the missiles, just missiles, you know that there are many countries in the world which have the missiles. But having a program that will be able to destroy an incoming ballistic missile has been very difficult. We should understand why so. Why has it been so difficult? So, if we just talk about any ballistic missile, normally a ballistic missile will have 4 phases. The first phase is normally called as the boost phase, sometimes also called as the launch phase. Then after that you have the post boost phase. Then after that you have the mid course, and then finally you have the terminal phase. So when we talk about these 4 phases, you have to understand that when we talk about the other missiles, for example, we also talked about Akash. Astra is another air-to-air missile which can also be used to destroy any incoming target. But what's the difference here? If we have those missiles, what is the use of a Prithvi air defense or an advanced air defense? The difference is that when you look at most of the other such programs or other such missiles, they usually work at the terminal phase. Now, what is the meaning of terminal phase? When we talk about the boost phase, this is the first phase, just after the launch of the missile, just at the time of the launch of the missile, this is called as the boost phase. Then after that, once it is in the atmosphere, it is called as the post boost phase. Then the mid course is where it is coming towards the target. And finally, when it has started to descend towards the target, this is when you call it as the terminal phase. Now, when a ballistic missile is at the terminal phase, it has already come very close to the target. So maybe it's in the range of 40 kilometers, 30 kilometers, 50 kilometers maybe. Now, what we are also talking about is that if it was a normal warhead, then in that case perhaps 50 kilometers is fine. What if it's a nuclear warhead? A nuclear warhead has a larger destructive capacity, meaning that you cannot let this missile come so close to you. Because if it has come so close to you, then even if it is destroyed in the air, in the atmosphere itself, maybe 30 kilometers away from the target, is still more than enough to destroy the target or destroy the nearby areas. So that's why we would not want to do that. So that's why what you will see is when we talk about these systems, when we talk about the Prithvi air defense or the advanced air defense, they will try to intercept anything that is incoming at least in the mid-course range, so that the ballistic missile does not come very close to the target. This is something that will be tried upon. So initially when we started with the program, as a developmental phase, what we saw was initially we developed it for the terminal phase, that anything that has come to the terminal phase from there will be able to destroy the target. But that was not enough, and that is when we started to work on a better variant. And over a course of time, you'll see that 2006 was when Prithvi air defense was tested for the first time. 2007 was when advanced air defense was tested for the first time, and since then there have been many tests that have happened. We have seen multiple tests, and most of these tests have been successful, and that is the reason why DRDO has been very confident about the development of this particular system. This is what we are going to try. So when we talk about the Prithvi air defense, it will have a capacity, or it rather has the capacity to look at a target or intercept a target which has come from 5,000 kilometers away. So once we know about the target, we know about the incoming missile, we would be in a position to destroy the target in the mid-course itself, instead of letting it come to the terminal phase, or letting it come very close to the target. So this is something that is being done. Now, there are two terms that I mentioned. One, exoatmosphere or exoatmospheric, and second, endoatmospheric. So usually you will see that when we talk about Prithvi air defense, it is called as exoatmospheric, and when we talk about the advanced air defense, it is endoatmospheric. What is the meaning? Meaning is that when we talk about the Prithvi air defense system, it works at the higher level of the atmosphere, it works at higher altitudes, meaning it can destroy a target which is as high as, let's say, 80 kilometers or more than 80 kilometers. So that's why it is called as exoatmospheric, because it is going beyond the atmosphere. When we talk about the endoatmospheric range, it means that we are talking about a target which perhaps would be even lesser than 30 kilometers. That is, from the surface, the incoming ballistic missile has a very small height. So in this case, something like advanced air defense will come into picture, and it will have a capacity to destroy such a target. Now, when we talk about this particular program, we discussed that there are only a handful of countries in the world which have the capacity to destroy an incoming target like this. Now, when we talk about something like this, now to understand why this has happened, or why most of the countries have not been able to develop anything like this, you have to understand a couple of points. The first point is about the trajectory. When we talk about the trajectory of an incoming ballistic missile, first of all, you know that we had a discussion on it, ballistic versus cruise missiles. So we discussed there that ballistic missiles have a longer range. Let's say we are talking about a ballistic missile which has a range of 100 kilometers. If the range is 100 kilometers, it would mean that the height perhaps can be up to 25 kilometers. Normally what we see is, if the range is x, then the height will be x by 4. Meaning if it is 100, it will be 25. If the range is 1000, the height will be maybe 250 kilometers. If it is 5000, it can be as high as 1000 kilometers, or even more than that. So normally 25%. It can be less than that. It is lesser than that in many of the cases. It's not a fixed figure, please remember this. Now what happens is, if we are talking about a ballistic missile with a range of, let's say, 1000 kilometers, it would mean that it perhaps would be able to attain a height of maybe, let's say, 200 kilometers or even 250 kilometers for that matter. So in this case, we are talking about a height which is as good as the height of some of the satellites. So if you have to destroy such a target, we are essentially talking about destroying a satellite. And this is where you will see that there was something else that India did. 2019 March, there was another test that had happened, and that was anti-satellite missile, ASAT missiles. So ASAT missile has a technology, we have been able to develop a technology which will be able to destroy even a satellite which is approximately, let's say, 400-500 kilometers away. So even when we talk about Prithvi air defense, this is also going to work in the same range. Now this becomes a very difficult task. If you talk about anti-satellite missiles, again, there are only a handful of countries which have the capacity to destroy a satellite which is beyond the atmosphere, and developing such a technology has been very difficult for most of the countries. So the trajectory that is being taken, the height that is being achieved, this becomes very, very difficult to handle. Many a times, while the incoming trajectory is coming, when the, let's say, ballistic missile is in its terminal phase, then in that case, the angles that it takes are also so low that it becomes very difficult for anything to intercept such a missile. So trajectory becomes one very difficult point to handle. Second, speed. When we talk about ballistic missiles, we already discussed that ballistic missiles travel much faster as compared to the cruise missiles. So since it travels much faster, for the interceptor also to be able to destroy such a target, you will have to work as fast. You will have to have a mechanism that is able to track the incoming missile also so fast. So that becomes another difficulty. So the first difficulty that we see is in terms of the trajectory, sometimes also combined with the height that will be attained, and second would be on the basis of speed. These are the two factors that make anything like this or development of anything like this very difficult. So this is all about the defense mechanism against ballistic missiles that we have: advanced air defense and Prithvi air defense. Now, if you have been following the news articles, if you go back to January and February 2020, you will see that permissions are being sought from the Ministry of Defense so that the ballistic missile defense program can be deployed in Delhi. So that if anyone wants to target Delhi, we have a mechanism which will be able to intercept any incoming target. So the permission is being sought after, and very soon, at least for Delhi, we will have a mechanism wherein we will be able to save Delhi from any of the incoming ballistic missile attacks. Similarly, the permissions are also being sought for other major cities of India, for example, for Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Bangalore, etc. So this is all about this particular topic, and with this we come to the end of all the discussions about missiles. Please remember, this is one area from where most of the questions come, if at all they come. We have seen that the questions from this segment, that is the entire chapter of defense, are not asked as much as some of the other chapters, but still, whenever the questions come, you will see that most of the times the questions will be from missiles. So that is why this is the most important topic when it comes to the chapter of defense.